It's time to test some videos that you've sent in to see if they are real or fake. We're going to start with this one sent in by Veronica. She says, I found this video where a British man tries food with added MSG.
It's rounded all the flavours together, almost like enhanced them in different ways and made the dish kind of like complete.
He tries several dishes and he finds them all more delicious with MSG. However, he never does a blind taste test.
Oh my word!
Could you please test MSG with Dave and the kids? We can do that. There's actually been quite a lot of channels in the past that have tested MSG, and some of them compare using MSG to an equal amount of salt.
Which one you prefer?
That one.
Dad has picked the MSG. Is there a difference?
And the salt is in that, to me, is almost overwhelming.
MSG does contain sodium and so does table salt, so they both taste salty. But MSG has a lot less sodium in it than table salt does. So if you compare equal amounts, you're just going to notice that this one is super, super salty. On the flip side, you also can't compare adding MSG to no salt at all, or you'll notice that this one is just more salty. You need to balance out the amount of salt in the dish. And to do that, you need to add about 1/4 of the amount of table salt as you do MSG, so that the saltiness is balanced. For each of these tests, I'm going to use 3 samples. This is called a triangle taste test. You make 2 that are the same and 1 that is different. If they can't correctly identify which one is different, then they can't taste the difference that we've made by adding MSG instead of salt. Can you identify which one is different?
All right, one of these kids is doing their own thing.
Are they different?
One is different.
Maybe the first one, because I think these two were a little bit like less tomatoey.
It's not a dramatic difference.
Yeah, the middle one's different.
I think that these two are the same and that this one is different.
Which one do you prefer?
The 2 outside ones.
I think these ones might have been slightly nicer.
Now for some homemade mac and cheese.
Again, I can't really taste the difference. I wish I could. I'm sorry, audience. I think that this one's different and that these two are the same.
I think that the middle one's different again. That one, I think this one tastes better than that one. So one of these is different. I can recognise the outside ones both feel like they have a much stronger flavour. It's just like they're a bit more artificial, cheesy Dorito flavour, which is, I like Doritos, I just don't want them in pasta.
Next we have some fried rice.
What a great debunking this is. It's quite hard to tell because you get different amounts of egg in every single mouthful. What am I supposed to be tasting? Is there a secret ingredient or?
I can't tell you or it would bias the results.
We don't want to bias the results. That's the science going on here. True science. Sorry, can't tell the difference. All good. Like it.
Yeah, this is the different one. This one's very flavourless. Yeah, I think this one's different. They're not saltier, but they are a bit more like umami punch.
I think it's this one.
Which one do you prefer?
I think I prefer these 2.
I think that I prefer these 2 just because the flavour seems to be a bit more strong.
For this next one, I've doubled the amount of MSG, which means we've got more than is recommended, but I just want to see if it's easier to detect.
That's a yummy chicken noodle soup. The middle one is more chickeny, like it's had more chicken stock.
That's incorrect.
That's wrong.
I think that these 2 are the same and that this one's different.
These 2 taste, again, not much saltier, maybe a little saltier, but the main difference is like the creaminess.
I think I prefer this one because these 2, they just seemed a bit more oily.
I think these 2 are better.
They're all the same. They're all nice. I don't know, I just can't taste the difference.
I wonder if I just sprinkle it right on top of the toast, will Dave be able to taste it?
All right, here we go. Oh, that's salty. That one tasted sort of chickeny, like a ramen sprinkle stuff on top.
So which one's the odd one out?
That one.
Correct.
Yes.
Which one do you prefer?
Probably this one.
Scientific studies have shown exactly what you just saw, that different people can detect MSG at differing levels in food. Interestingly, when they have taken MSG and dissolved it in water and given it to people to taste, they've described it as sour, bitter, slightly salty, and unpleasant. But when it's added to complex dishes, especially ones that have protein in them, it can boost the umami or savoury flavour of the dish. But that's not always perceived as a positive boost, as you saw. Some of them, they preferred the one without. And that's particularly the case if you haven't been brought up having MSG added to your foods. You may not like it. So before you add MSG to everything thinking it's going to make it better, perhaps do your own taste test and see how you perceive it and if you like it or not.
It's made a fairly sweet yoghurt, slightly bitter. Don't do that.
Next, Julie wants to know if the $20 strawberries that are being sold in the US are actually special, or is it just hype?
I couldn't help myself and had to try the viral $20 strawberry.
And here it is.
And I just bought 4 of the $20 strawberries.
I have it in my hands right now, straight from Kyoto.
Let's try the $20 strawberry. Wow. Oh my gosh.
Oh wow. That's super sweet.
So juicy.
And I'd go so far as to say it's perfect, like put it in the dictionary as the definition.
That is probably the best strawberry I've ever had.
By the time you import a strawberry from Japan to America and individually package it, you are no doubt paying way too much for an individual strawberry. But that being said, fruit in Japan can be very expensive. Locally grown fruit is graded according to symmetry, sweetness, colour, texture, perfection basically. And the closer it is to perfect, the higher the grade it gets and the more expensive it is. And this is not even top of the range. Look at these prices. These perfect fruits are given as gifts. But thankfully you can also get lower grade fruit at a cheaper price, or no one would be able to eat fruit. In Japan, a lot of the land area is mountains, which is not ideal for farming. So a lot of the farms are quite small. So in order to make more money, the farmers can't just make a greater quantity. Instead, they focus on making better quality, and therefore those perfect fruits that fetch the high price. If we look at strawberries, for example, though, each prefecture grows its own varieties of strawberries. So it's become like a competition of which prefecture can grow the best strawberries in Japan. One prefecture even has a strawberry research institute. Right now there are more than 300 registered varieties of different Japanese strawberries, and amazingly none of them are GMO. They've all been painstakingly developed through selective crossbreeding. One of the newer varieties that's gaining popularity is called Tochiaika, and according to their website, that is the variety that's being sold for $20 per strawberry in LA. So I was very happy when I found this variety in the supermarket for only 1,280 yen for a tray of 9 strawberries, which works out at about $1 per strawberry.
It's very nice wrapping and packaging.
They are extra sweet, actually.
It's a very nice strawberry.
They are very sweet. The other thing about this particular breed of strawberries is if you cut them in half down the middle, they're supposed to look like a love heart. Would you pay $20 per strawberry though?
No.
We also have these ones, which are called the Amalberry. So these definitely don't look as perfect, like that's a perfect looking strawberry compared to that one.
Yeah.
So they don't have the perfect look, but they're also supposed to be quite sweet. Let's test them out. Ready?
Cheers.
Go.
They're so soft.
Slightly different flavour, isn't it?
That's closer to what we get in Australia, I think. But the ones in Australia seem to have that little sour zing to it. That's a nice strawberry though.
Slightly sort of perfumey flavour to me. Yummy though. But which one would you prefer, this one or the other one?
I think the first one.
Me too.
That was a beautiful one.
While we were wandering around Tokyo, we also kept an eye out for Japanese gadgets to buy for you and try in a future episode. Japanese gadgets have a reputation for being next level, so I'm looking forward to testing all those out. After a long day of trains, shopping, exploring, more shopping, experiencing the crazy busy Shibuya crossing, and then more trains, which were actually very good, we finally got back to our accommodation and we were ready just to sit down, relax, and watch a show. Unfortunately, we don't speak the language, and all of the TV shows were, of course, in Japanese. On top of that, our local Australian shows were blocked, even though we had a paid subscription. Luckily, today's sponsor, NordVPN, has thousands of servers across 130 countries, so we could switch our location, which then made it look like we were back in Australia, and now we could log in normally and watch the footy.
Alex Pearce, the Moose is on the move. As he launches going!
So if you're travelling soon and want to be able to watch your shows from home and have cybersecurity, you can get the best deal by going to nordvpn.com/how-to-cook-that. And there's even a 30-day money-back guarantee. So that's nordvpn.com/how-to-cook-that. Next, I was sent this question. I found this video about how the US food industry is poisoning the current youth here. I want to know your food scientist opinion on this. Thank you. Wow, that was a lot of information that flashed up so fast you couldn't really read it. But it did give the impression that the ingredients lists now are a lot longer than they used to be, so there's a lot more in it. So let's break that down by having a look at the history of just one of the products. It would take forever to do all of them. Let's take a look at Nutella. If we go back in time a very long way to when Napoleon was around, due to some of his trade embargoes, there was a shortage of cocoa beans in Italy. So some of the chocolatiers tried to stretch the chocolate supply by mixing it with equal amounts of hazelnut, sugar, and chocolate. And if you grind those together, you end up with this delicious, thick paste called gianduja. It can be moulded or cut into bars, and when it's at room temperature it is firm, but it's still a little bit soft. It's not hard like chocolate unless you put it in the fridge. Fast forward 140 years to just after World War II, and again there is a shortage of the supplies to make chocolate. So Michele Ferrero decides to do some experimenting with the gianduja recipe, and instead of adding chocolate, he adds oil, sugar, and cocoa powder. So the original gianduja had equal parts hazelnuts, sugar, and chocolate. And if we break the chocolate down to its constituents, we have cocoa powder, cocoa butter, and sugar. So essentially all he did was swap the cocoa butter, which is solid at room temperature, for oil, which is liquid. And as a result, the paste was much runnier, and even if you chill it in the fridge, it won't set. So the solution was to put it in a jar and call it a new product. It is now super crema, which you can spread on your bread. The marketing for this I found fascinating. It said that 25 grams of this stuff has the same amount of calories as an egg, 100 grams of meat, 120 grams of cheese, 100 grams of honey, or 75 grams of prosciutto. So they're promoting this as being a super high energy food. The strange thing is that all the foods they listed have completely different amounts of calories in them. In reality, 25 grams of super crema actually has 125 calories in it. Now we're going to fast forward again to 1964 when Mikel Ferrero's son decided to tweak the recipe some more. He reduced the hazelnuts, increased the sugar, slightly decreased the cocoa but added milk powder, which effectively makes this a milk chocolate spread instead of dark. And then for the fat, he used palm oil. He then added a little bit of vanilla and a tiny bit of soy lecithin, which is an emulsifier that's been around since the 1920s, and it will stop the oil separating out in the jar. Grind that together for a couple of hours and you've got the very first product that was marketed as Nutella. Nutella became very popular and the recipe for it hasn't changed since it was invented in 1964. So if it hasn't changed, why has the ingredients list changed? Well, let's take a look. Back in 1964 in Italy, if you made a product, you had to list the ingredients on the label. It wasn't till much later in the EU that it was specified that those ingredients had to be in order by weight from most through to least. And as well as that, if you were using any gels, thickeners, emulsifiers, even though it's such a tiny amount, you do have to put that on your ingredients list so that the consumer knows it's in the product. Over the years, there's been various other changes, like you had to add a best before date and a batch date. So if there was any food poisoning, they would be able to track it down to a specific batch. There also had to be clearer labeling for additives, and as well as that, there's now clearer labelling for allergens, so it's easier to see if it has any of those allergens in it. You also now have to add a nutrition information panel. So there's been lots of changes to the food regulations over the years, and they're very specific, right down to the minimum size font you can use on your labelling for nutrition information panels. And manufacturers have to stick to these laws with their products. So it's not that what was in the product changed, it's how its label has changed. One other change that affected a lot of the ones on that list is something called a compound ingredient. If you have, for example, chocolate chip cookies and you add chocolate chips, you can't just write chocolate chips on your ingredient list. You now have to, after the word chocolate chips, have in brackets all the ingredients that are in the chocolate chips. And if you have enriched wheat flour on your ingredients, now you have to put in brackets everything that wheat flour is enriched with. So the flour plus all of the extra vitamins or minerals that have been added to the flour. That makes the ingredients lists look a lot longer. But it's not that the recipe has changed, it's just that legally they have to tell you all those details that they didn't have to tell you before. Not to say that brands can't change their recipe, they can do that too, so it is a good idea to read the ingredients and check that there's nothing in there that you're allergic to or that you don't want to consume for any reason. Food labelling laws also do vary between country, but generally nowadays most stuff has to be written on the label. The exception to that is flavourings. They can often just write flavourings and they're not telling you exactly what it is that's gone into that mixture of flavourings. The other thing is enzymes. Enzymes are used quite a lot in food manufacturing and not just in dairy, in yogurt and cheese manufacture, but also even in things like fruit juices, and a lot of bakery goods use enzymes and they don't have to put them on the food label. As long as they are deactivated before the product is sold, it's seen as such a tiny amount that it doesn't have to be specified. Who knows, that might change in the future and everyone will freak out going, oh, there's enzymes in here, they were probably there before, and now you're actually just seeing it being listed. All right, moving on. Next, I need to debunk myself. In our last gadgets video, we tested out this gadget that makes little rice cups, and it did it perfectly when I didn't use foil, and when I used foil, like it said on the label, it just totally stuck. So we said it was clever if you didn't follow the instructions. But someone who reads Japanese read the label for me on the video and let me know in the comments that even though it says to line the cups with foil, further up it says to use foil that is lined with silicone. Now, that's not a product we get here, but when we were in Japan, I found silicone-lined foil. So I tested again when we got home, and sure enough, the rice does not stick to the foil at all. If you've got anything that you want me to debunk, make sure you let me know. You can email it to me using the email that is in the comments. With thanks to my amazing patrons for all of your support that helps so much with making these videos. Make it a great week by being kind to others, and I'll see you on Friday.